Hello everyone, this is Miss Maria from Main Street Arts. I'm glad you could join me again today. Today I'm going to show you how to make chalk prints on paper. I'm going to be using chalk pastel, but you can use sidewalk chalk as well. That would work. So here are a few examples of some prints that I did with some chalk, and you're going to use water, and I'll show you how to do it. This one's really quite bright. As you can see, there's some really cool detail on there and some cool shapes. I also, as you can see behind me, I made a really cool kind of banner with the pieces that my family and I made. I just cut them up into triangles and I stitched them together, and I hang it on my wall. And it's kind of a fun project. So I will show you step by step of what to do. Alright, so I'm going to show you the materials that we're going to need for this project, and I'm going to use, these are chalk pastels that I have, but if you don't have chalk pastels, you can use sidewalk chalk. You're going to need some paper, so I just cut some paper into some little rectangles here, and it's not thin like computer paper, it's a little thicker. It's kind of more like a thin cardstock, so if you have something like that, a thicker paper would do better. I have a baking sheet, so this is just kind of a smaller baking sheet, and make sure that your paper will fit in your baking sheet. And I have a butter knife. This is going to be used for scraping the pastel into the water, and of course I've got some water here. Okay, so the first step is going to be to get your baking sheet set up. So I've got my baking sheet here, and then I'm going to fill it with water. I am going to pour it from a jar because I found that's a little easier than trying to fill a baking sheet up with water in your sink and then move it to your table, because it kind of sloshes around. So I'm going to pour some water into my baking sheet, and as you can see, every surface of the baking sheet is covered with water. So it's like about 1/8 of an inch or so, 1/4 inch of water in there. And then I'm going to pick my pastels, or my sidewalk chalk. So I'm going to start with maybe some darker colors. So I'll choose this darker blue. And then I'm going to take my knife, so the side of my butter knife that's kind of serrated here. I'm just going to scrape the edge of the chalk pastel, and as you can see, it kind of sprays out onto the water. So I'm going to do enough to make it kind of nice and colorful. And I'll pick a different color, about a pink. And I'll do the same thing, and the colors can overlap. And then maybe I'll pick one more color. How about a green? Do the same with the green. So as you can see, it kind of spreads out on the water as you push it on. I might do another color since some of my other colors kind of went to the outside there. Alright, so then what you're going to do is take your paper, and you're just basically going to set the paper right on top. And you don't want to push the paper all the way down so that it goes into the water. You're just going to lightly press the surface of the paper. It's like a boat. So it's going to float right on top. You're just going to press the surface very gently, so that way every part of the paper touches some of the chalk. And the best part is when you peel it up. Ooh, that's a good one. So as you can see, all of the chalk, it's like magic. It just sticks to the surface of the paper. So I'm going to set that aside to dry, and I'm going to add some more colors right on top of the colors I already have. So I have my helper here, Penny, and she chose a light blue, and as you can see, she is scraping the light blue. She could pick another color.
Chalk.
Okay, and then pick one more color, Penny. Good, nice yellow on top. That'll look really nice. Okay, so now Penny will take her paper and lightly put it on top and just gently press the surface, not to make sure that we don't put the water on top of the paper. Maybe rub it a little bit more in the middle. There you go. And wow, that's a great one. So that's, you can see that's Penny's. Okay, so I want to show you how to do something kind of really cool. If you have all the colors for a rainbow, you could do a rainbow one. So I'll start with a little red, and then I'm going to do a little orange, and then I'll do yellow, green, blue, a little purple. So I'll take my paper and again just lightly touch the surface and make sure it doesn't go under. And if it does go under, not a big deal. All right, we'll see how this one came out. Oh, nice. So it looks like my red didn't quite catch. I think maybe I'll put it back in, try to get some of that red. I got some of it. It's like kind of like a bubble that popped. But that's really cool anyway. So what a surprise that is. And once these dry, these will be really cool. And actually the chalk, once it's dry, doesn't really come up off of the paper. Okay, so here are some of my examples that my family and I did. And as you can see, there's a lot of really cool variety there and a lot of surprises that happened. So you will want to let these dry completely before you do much with them. And so it'll take, you know, maybe a half an hour or so to dry. I will show you how I made the banner that you saw in the introduction. And I'll also show you a few other things that you could do with papers like this. Okay, so we have Miss Penny here. She is using a chalk print background as a background for her wonderful kitty drawing, which is one option of how you can use these. Okay, another thing that you can do is I've cut some shapes. I took a page and I just cut some shapes and kind of like this. And just take it, and these are great for collage. So you can cut some shapes, random shapes, or if you have a specific kind of shape in mind that you want to do, you could do a squiggle. Okay, and then you take some glue. You can make a collage. So I have a blue piece of construction paper. I think the blue shows up really good with the orange and red kind of tones of my paper. You could make a little scene, make a cool collage. It can be an abstract collage, or it can be maybe the background for some kind of an imaginative scene that you could draw on top later once it's glued on. As you can see, I have been gluing some cutout shapes onto my blue paper, and what a cool image that is. So this is an option for you. So there's my chalk print collage that I made. So my papers have dried, and as you can see, they get a little, you know, the paper gets a little warpy after it dries. And so to fix that, if you want, you can just put them under a heavy book for, you know, a couple hours or even however long you can. And that should flatten them right out. Another thing is, depending on like the paper that you have, depending on the kind of chalk you have, you know, will determine whether or not the chalk will come up. So I did these a little while ago, and the chalk really does not come up on my fingers once it's dry. The batch I did today, some of the chalk wants to come up a little bit more, which if you want it to really stay on there, you can always take some hairspray and you can just spray the top of your paper here with hairspray if you don't have a fixative at home. So, and then that hairspray, once it dries, it should form a nice kind of clear layer so that way that none of the chalk comes up. You can also just take a paper towel and just kind of blot it and see what comes up. But it shouldn't come up too much. But another thing I wanted to mention is, so for example, my collage, if you notice when I was gluing it down, I kind of was going like this. I wasn't rubbing it down because you are dealing with chalk pastel, so I don't want to rub it and smudge it if there is a little bit of loose chalk on there. Alright, so I'm going to show you how I made the banner. I have a triangle kind of template that I made out of plain paper, and I'm just going to be cutting some triangle shapes out of my chalk printed paper. So there's one, and you can also I'm just kind of cutting, but you can also trace it on. And it certainly doesn't have to be a triangle. It could be any shape you want it to be. And there's another one. So you can keep going with this kind of process until you have the number of triangles or pieces of your banner that you want. Okay, so I have about 1, 2, 3, 4. I have about 6 that I cut out here, but you can make it however long you want. And I just wanted to make a note that there's some really beautiful shapes that are kind of more of scrap shapes that from when I was cutting my banner shapes, and I always like to hang on to these shapes and just kind of put them away or save them for another day. You can use them for a collage project on another day. You could use them if you wanted to send a letter to somebody. Instead of going out to buy a card, you could always just take a piece of paper. So you have a piece of paper, and there's your card, and then you can have a really awesome homemade card, and you can glue all these shapes down, and you could write a little message right on top. So I always love saving scraps because you never know what you might want to do with them. So I'll show you the next step here. Will be I have a hole puncher. But if you don't have a hole puncher, you could use like a sharp pencil or anything sharp that you have. So you're just going to punch holes in the corners of these triangles. So as you can see, I have a little hole there, and then I'll do a little hole up here. So I've got 2 holes in each one. And I'll do that for all of them, try to make them kind of in the same spot on each one. But it doesn't have to be perfect. You could even save these little dots that come out from your hole punch. Put them in a little container and save them for collage on another day. Alright, so now I found some string. I just found some purple string that I had laying around, but you could use anything, yarn, thread, whatever. And I kind of cut it into some small little pieces. So I'm going to start by putting the string through one of the holes and then putting it through the hole of another one. And then I'm just going to tie it. And I'm going to make sure that there's a little gap in between the 2 triangles so they don't kind of overlap. And then, so as you can see, there's a little bit of a gap there. And then I will just trim it like that. One, and then I could you just do it until all of your banner pieces are tied up. Trying to leave the same kind of distance of gap in between each banner piece. Alright, so as you can see, I have all of my pieces together, and then I also on the ends I put like a little loop of string so that way you could put it on a tack or a nail on your wall. Here is the banner that I just made, and I have my collage over here, and I also have my daughter's drawing over there. And so these are just a few examples of things that you can do with chalk printing. So thank you for joining me again today. If you have any projects that you do with chalk printing, feel free to put them in our messages or send us some emails. And so this is just a really fun project that you could do lots and lots with. It's a great way to make textured and really awesome colored paper. So the possibilities are certainly endless. And thank you again, and I hope to see you next week.